Feels very fitting that I'm trying to film a summer reading recommendations video and I feel like I'm about to melt. I think there's something particularly about summer that makes me want to read. Like winter is all about like curling up and getting cozy, whereas summer is all about like reading in my hammock, or reading on holiday. And you want something maybe a little bit more adventurous or swoon worthy. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but if it's also you, I have got some recommendations for you. Specifically, we are talking summer romances, and I have got 8 recommendations for you today. The first recommendation that I'm going to make is my first book, The Summer House in Santorini. I'm sorry, I won't do this beyond this. Actually, that's a lie because my second recommendation is my second book, The Summer Wedding in Santorini. Summer House in Santorini is about Anna, whose late father left her a summer house on the island of Santorini. She has to go there to claim it, and while she's there, she meets the family of her estranged late father and gets to know a little bit more about what his life was like, what actually happened between him and her mother. And then the second book is a continuation of her story a few years later. I'm not going to give you a review of these, obviously, given that I wrote them, but I'll just put my Amazon ratings on the screen. Hopefully that helps. And before we close off the self-promotion altogether, I didn't put it on this list because it's not out yet, but if you're not new here, you already know my book, You've Got Chainmail, is coming out on the 15th of August. Pre-order links in the description, as always. The third book I want to talk about will be no surprise to anyone who's been around the channel for a while, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is my favorite romance novel of all time. Emily Henry is a can't-miss instant buy author for me. This book is phenomenal. It is about January Andrews, who is a women's fiction writer who is suffering from severe writer's block. Part of that is because her father has recently died. I'm saying this premise and I'm realizing how similar it sounds to my book. I promise you I wrote my book before I read Beach Read. I don't even think Beach Read was out at the time. Anyway, she gets a house from her late father that she has to go live in because she doesn't have any money. And while she's there, not only is she unpacking the grief, but also her grumpy next door neighbor happens to be her university rival, Gus, who is also an author and also suffering from severe writer's block, though he writes literary fiction. And the two of them decide to swap genres for the summer. They spend a lot of time together, and it's a very, very wonderful rivals to friends to lovers story. It's got small town vibes as well, and I love it. I think it's so romantic. It's so funny. Emily Henry is either loved or, I don't think anyone hates Emily Henry, but like loved less for the banter between characters. Most people who read it love it. If you love really good chemistry and really good banter between characters, Emily Henry is your girl. Some people say that it's like unrealistic banter, which like, of course it is. But if you, like me, grew up on Gilmore Girls, which is the most unrealistic level of banter ever, this is gonna fill that void in your life. And you get a wonderful love story to go with it. Gus is such a good book boyfriend. I think this is the summariest of Emily Henry's books. To me, it feels very warm and adventurous. I actually don't think that you could go wrong with any Emily Henry book if you want summery vibes. But I think the other Emily Henry book that I'm going to put on this list is her other summariest book to me, which is Happy Place. Happy Place is very different than Beach Read because it's not a story about two people falling in love. It's about two people who were in love. It's a second chance romance about Harriet and Wynne, where they were together for years, but then they broke up, but they haven't told any of their close friends that they broke up. And they're invited to their friend's beach house for their sort of annual group trip there, but they find out it's going to be the last one because the house is being sold. And Harriet's planning to go alone, and she's going to tell everyone when they get there, but then Wynne is there when she gets there, and she's like, wait, we agreed that I was going to do this one myself. Then she finds out it's because Wynne had been coerced into going because the person who organized the trip is getting surprise married that week. So they decide they're not going to tell their friends because it would ruin the wedding week. So they're pretending to still be together. You don't really know what happened and why they broke up. And so it flashes back and forth between past and present to kind of show you that. It's incredibly summery because it takes place in this beach house. They're doing all these like summery things as their like last chance at doing this holiday right. I really love a second chance romance that's done well, which to me means I believe why these two people are good for each other, and I believe why they broke up and that it was valid and that they're able to move past that. I personally felt like that was achieved for me. It's a less happy book, like it's a little bit more emotional, but I think it's still a brilliant summery read. The next book that I want to recommend is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. Now, I have read a lot of Christina Lauren's books, and The Unhoneymooners is not my favorite of their books, but it is one of my favorites. And this is about a girl named Olive who ends up taking her twin sister's honeymoon because she was one of the only people to not get food poisoning at the wedding. Funny enough, the only other person to not get food poisoning was the best man, Ethan, who is her sworn nemesis. So they go on this once-in-a-lifetime honeymoon together despite kind of hating each other, and they agree that they're just gonna like keep it quite separate. But then while they're there, she runs into someone who's going to be her boss because she's getting a new job, and they end up pretending to be newlyweds in front of this guy, and so the lie just kind of starts to spiral. They're of course sharing a honeymoon suite together. It's obviously forced proximity, fake dating, I guess fake married. It's very summery because of this like all-inclusive holiday that they're on and all of the stuff that they're doing as part of that. I thought that their chemistry was really strong. I didn't necessarily buy into like why they hated each other to begin with, but my suspension of disbelief is quite high for these sorts of things, so I was fine with it. And I think if you can get over a little bit of an unreasonable rival's reasoning, then you should be fine with this book. And if you've not read any Christina Lauren before, I think it's a really good entry point into Christina Lauren's books. I'm gonna be really bold and recommend a book that I haven't actually read yet, which is The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. I've been meaning to read this book since I got it last month, but I just haven't yet. But all of the reviews that I have seen for it have said that it is super summery, super fun. And this book is a marriage of convenience, again, fake married story about Anna and Liam. Anna married Liam when they were in university for housing, for like a housing subsidy, but she thought that they got divorced after they graduated. They didn't, because Liam was keeping a little secret, which is that in his grandfather's will, there was a stipulation that he wouldn't get any of his inheritance unless he'd been happily married for 5 years. And just when he thinks almost gotten away with it, and the 5 years is almost up, his family are like, we need to meet your wife. So he has to admit, I guess, to Anna that they are still married and get her to come on an island vacation with them. And so the two reconnect and have to spend time together pretending to be happily married so that Liam can get his inheritance. I think this sounds like the most brilliant mashup of all of my favorite tropes, which is like forced proximity, fake dating, an inheritance plotline, second chance romance, maybe it's friends to lovers. I don't know if they were actually together in the first part. Probably not. I think it sounds great. Every review that I've seen says that it nails the summery vibes. So I'm recommending it even though I haven't read it. I am going to be picking it up in the next couple of weeks. So if you're also going to be reading it, let me know in the comments so that we can buddy read together and talk about it when we're done, because I'm so excited. The next book that I want to recommend is The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegemund-Broka. I'm going to be honest, it's been a while since I've read this book, and I don't even remember if it actually takes place during summertime. I'm guessing so, because as I'm rereading the description, it talks about like the Florida heat, but to be fair, I think Florida's hot all the time. But it's about Katrina and Nathan, who wrote a book together years ago, and it was like a super bestseller. But then like something happened between them and they stopped speaking to each other. But now their publisher is like, you need to deliver that second book out of that 2-book deal we gave you. And so they end up having to hole up together in a house in Florida to write this book as quickly as possible so they can get out of each other's hair and just never speak to each other again. But turns out that all that chemistry that got them in trouble the first time around didn't go anywhere. Surprise, surprise. This is a husband and wife writing duo, and I love seeing them writing together. I really want to know, and they've probably said this in an interview and I just haven't seen it, so if you know, let me know in the comments. I really want to know how they split up the writing responsibilities, because the perspectives in this book feel so distinct. And I found that in their second book, Do I Know You, which I read last year. The heat in this book, both in Florida and also between them, is insane. Again, we're talking forced proximity, and it's just an absolute pressure cooker of a situation. Again, very emotional, probably similar in emotion to Happy Place, if not even a little bit more emotional, but would make such an excellent beach read. And I don't mean the Emily Henry book, I mean actually to read on the beach. And of course, I love books and about writers, which is why I love this book, why I love beach read. Just So good. And the last book that I have to recommend to you is a less steamy. Not that any of the ones that I've recommended are like super, super spicy. They're not. I've been quite tame in my recommendations. But if you want even a step down from that, I'm going to recommend The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary. And it's a dual timeline book. And in the present day timeline, Addie and her best friend are on their way to a wedding when they get into a car accident, a very minor car accident, where the other driver is her ex, Dylan. And she hasn't seen or spoken to Dylan since they broke up 2 years before. The past timeline is showing them meeting and then getting together, and of course leading up to what happened to make them break up. So again, we're talking second chance romance. The earlier timeline is very, very romantic and summery because they meet while they're abroad, and it's very like lazing by the pool, going on adventures together. They're very young, obviously like adults, but very like young love, new adult kind of romance. And the later timeline is also very summery, but more like in the heat of the British summer, trying to make their way to this wedding, getting in all sorts of hijinks along the way, and of course having to deal with the fact that they're together for the first time since they broke up. If you need to check trigger warnings, please do so, because what led to their breakup was quite serious, not between the two of them, but something that one of them experiences. But it's also incredibly romantic, the love between them and the tension. I won't say chemistry because it's not steamy, but the sort of tension and draw between them is still so strong and so evident. And you can tell even in the second timeline that they're so good for each other, even if they have gone through some stuff that made them doubt that. I haven't read this book in ages, so it might be due a reread. And there you have it. Those are my 8 summer reading recommendations. If you've got any favorites that I missed out, please put them in the comments. I definitely need some good summery reads this year because I feel like I've already read all of the ones I have. So let me know what I should be reading in the comments. If you're not already subscribed, be sure to hit that button. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.